we might, for example, have the same gene, and you see these in some rare diseases, genes for, say, hair growth on our faces, or whatever it may be. Things that are repressed, but it's just a simple switch more than an incredible rewrite of the whole code. It's just a switch of what's going on, what's going off. We have a gene, for instance, that slows down our growth almost. We are sort of growing slower than chimps. They mature faster. We almost have a lifelong adolescence going on. We don't have hair. We stay almost hairless like babies. When we're constantly learning, our brains have incredible plasticity throughout our lives that is in part because of, sorry, I'm kind of getting off topic.
Oh, this is wonderful.
But is in part because the genes that would retard that growth, that would switch us into the more mature stages, don't really act upon us like that. The switch is just being turned off, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, I could talk about a lot more things. I could talk about, oh, how about this? Another thing we read in FIP, and this is, I think, really important as for the larger kind of applications, which, you know, art students love, of Darwin's theory. So we read The Descent of Man by Darwin, which was kind of his later, his later musings about these applications when turned on to people, if I can find what I want to say. Okay, so in 1871, Darwin publishes The Descent of Man. And this was all about how morals and intelligence could have evolved. Now, this is a very interesting idea, especially when compared to someone like Kant, who says that morals have to be removed from reality. To be moral, you have to be removed. You have to have autonomy of will, freedom. But there's also a very strong sense that morals in Darwin seem to have evolved from natural processes. I mean, what is it that makes morals successful? Well, herd instinct, for one. If you belong to a group that protects itself, this is on group selection, if that group protects itself, that group will survive. In terms of genetic selection, which is the way that Darwinism is being seen more and more now, I think, a gene for altruistic acts, say I want to save someone from drowning, whether I actually have a gene for that or it's probably a complex interplay of genes. The idea of what a gene is also very complicated. It's not a certain number of nucleotides or anything like that. It's a complex interplay that creates a functional unit that interacts with other functions. It's very complex. It's all emergent. You have genes forming proteins, forming tissues, and those tissues act in certain ways, so it's very complex. It's not as simple as this, but if I can break it down as simple as this for theoretical purposes, if I had a gene for saving someone from drowning, that gene would be successful if I was able to save other people with the same copy of the gene. Does that make sense, Rebecca?
Mm-hmm.
So, say we both have a gene for saving other people who have the same gene. The problem is you can't really know if they have the same gene. There's this interesting idea of the green beard hypothesis, which is that, say a person, or like a variation of person came along that had a green beard, and this green beard gene also linked to a gene to help other people with green beards. Now that gene would be incredibly successful because these people would all help each other selflessly and obviously obtain great success, and that gene would spread on in a competitive scenario. But since we can't know if other people have the same genes as us, it makes sense genetically to save people only really if they're related to you. This is the idea of kin selection. One geneticist said it really, really well when he said, I would give up my life to save 2 of my brothers or 8 of my cousins. Because your brothers have half of your genes on average. Your cousins have 1/8 of your genes on average. The idea of altruism only makes sense if, in being selfless, you can help others who have the same selfless gene. So really, you're being selfish at the genetic level. This is the whole idea of Dawkins' the selfish gene. Obviously, there are many arguments to this. The whole idea of morality as an emergent property, for one. Whether our brains be dictated by... Yes?
Oh, just 1 minute left.
Oh. if our brains are dictated by genetics, that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't autonomous. I think it's silly in some ways to say that we have a gene for compassion. Obviously, a gene might influence the structure of our brain, and that structure could influence the runnings of our brain. But more and more in neuroscience, what they're seeing is that though your brain's structure is important, it's also important to remember that the actual structure of the brain isn't something that's set in stone. It doesn't go gene, structure, thought. It goes, one second, it goes, or the brain is a very plastic thing. Nurture has an incredible amount to do with this. It rewires neurons. Sorry, I'm getting way off topic, but it rewires neurons in a certain way. So I don't think you can look at genetics and Darwinism as dictating your entire nature. You're not evolved for anything. Well, you are, but you're also aware of this fact, and so you have the ability, maybe, maybe not, to act against however you might be inclined to act. I guess I'll wrap it up.